That sounds tough. A law school exam, a hornet's nest of interpretive questions, as you just said, that really paints a very descriptive picture. So, did the Trump team use this to their advantage? Can you describe what their defense looked like here?
Sure, their defense, I'm not sure their defense here raised all of those issues, but they certainly raised some of them. And there are cases pending in other states. There's a case in Colorado which recently concluded in a 5-day trial with witness testimony and documentary evidence, with the district judge, the lower court judge, stating that she would rule by the beginning of the month, which would then be subject to the Supreme Court of Colorado's review. And then ultimately, I think the real decider about all this would be the Supreme Court of the United States, where if a state were to make a final decision on this, not a preliminary one like was issued in Minnesota, my guess is it would get to the Supreme Court in some fashion. And I would guess they would take that case.
Let's talk about those cases in both Colorado and Michigan, talking about the eligibility of Trump on the ballot. Do you think that they are going to have similar outcomes here, because we just saw Minnesota be thrown out, or do you think it will be different?
Well, one issue I suppose would be I don't know the Colorado law on whether the political parties are deemed, in a sense, to control the decision of who gets on the ballot. I didn't see any of that talked about during the trial. And so I'm not sure how that would play in Colorado. In Michigan, the Secretary of State of Michigan has already said that there are certain Michigan state law provisions that tie her hands in who she can decide to put on the ballot. So as a matter of state law, I think she's taken the position that she doesn't have any authority to keep anyone off the ballot, and that will have to be a decision by a state court, presumably the highest state court in Michigan, to decide.
Were you surprised that this petition in Minnesota was rejected, or do you think that this was always a long shot?
I think it was always a long shot, and just to bring in the sensibility that courts have and the rules that govern their acceptance of cases are cabined by a bunch of doctrines that restrict what courts can and cannot decide. So at the federal level, the Article 3 judicial power is limited to actual cases or controversies. And what the court has used that to do is duck, if you will, or decline to exercise jurisdiction in cases where the case isn't ripe, or the party hasn't been concretely injured, or it's what is known as a political question. And I think this question partakes in some or all of those issues. And so the courts, and even state courts, mirroring what the Supreme Court does in these cases, is reluctant to step in until the process plays out in some way in the political branches. And by the political branches, I mean the legislature and the executive. So there's a reluctance to decide unless it's absolutely necessary.